What if an elementary school principal were one of the most famous archaeologists in the world? It could have happened, along with these other almost superstar cameos. There aren't really any major adult characters in E.T. besides Elliot's mom, and that was probably the right call, as a bunch of famous grown-up faces could very well have distracted too much from the story of a child's relationship with his otherworldly friend. But one of the most famous leading men of the era almost had a small but significant role. Specifically, Harrison Ford was supposed to play Elliot's principal. Even though he was a huge star, the plan was to only feature his voice and part of his body, but not his face. The scene was shot, but director Steven Spielberg eventually decided that it distracted from the kid-centric focus. Plus, Ford's fleeting presence would have been jarring in a cast of mostly unknown actors, so his scene ended up on the cutting room floor. The actor, of course, did just fine for himself, and so did E.T. It became the highest-grossing movie of 1982.
Well, tomorrow, like they say, tomorrow's the first day of the rest of your life. Am I right?
May we go now?
Tom Hiddleston has been playing Loki in the Marvel Cinematic Universe since 2011's Thor, and he's remained one of the most consistent pieces of the MCU on the big and small screens in the years since. But there was one MCU flick that he didn't quite make the cut for. In 2015's Avengers Age of Ultron, during Thor's visions at the hands of Wanda, the Thunder God imagines all of Asgard being led to ruin. Initially, this hallucination was supposed to include Loki, who Thor thought was dead after the events of Thor: The Dark World. Hiddleston did shoot some scenes for the film, but test screening responses to Age of Ultron ensured that this footage wouldn't make it into an already crowded story. According to the actor, viewers were confused by Loki's brief return and assumed that this meant that he was the one controlling Ultron. So instead, Thor's dream was streamlined and Loki didn't make the cut. But fortunately for Hiddleston's fans, they didn't have to wait too long to see him spread some mischief again. After Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney worked together on the FX reality show Welcome to Wrexham, it seemed inevitable that the latter would appear in Deadpool and Wolverine. Wade Wilson's entry into the MCU was understandably a passion project for Reynolds, and he ensured that some of his closest friends and family members showed up in the final cut. McElhenney did indeed shoot a cameo for the movie as a TVA agent, but moviegoers didn't get to see it when the movie came out in theaters in July 2024. Shortly after it premiered, Reynolds revealed that McElhenney was cut despite going through a lot of effort to make it to the set. During post-production, Reynolds simply realized that the scene would actually play better if it wasn't interrupted by a cameo. At least these two besties will always have Wrexham to unite them.
And for confidentiality reasons, nobody can see or hear any of this stuff.
The role of a Bangkok tattoo artist in The Hangover Part 2 spiraled into a series of endless headaches. The turmoil began with Mel Gibson's hiring, but that casting decision proved controversial for some members of the cast and crew. So Liam Neeson was called in shortly after to take over, just a few years after becoming an action icon by starring in Taken. Neeson did end up shooting some material, but the chaos wasn't over just yet. When the spring of 2011 rolled around, reshoots were necessary, including the segment with the tattoo artist. The problem was that those reshoots coincided with Neeson's schedule for Wrath of the Titans. With Neeson unable to get out of his commitments, the role was recast once again with Nick Cassavetes. Best known as the director of movies like John Q and The Notebook, Cassavetes didn't have anywhere near the star power of Gibson or Neeson, but maybe that was a blessing in disguise, as his presence finally brought this tumultuous saga to a close.
Bangkok has him now, and she'll never let him go.
After The Force Awakens made over $2 billion at the global box office, everyone wanted to get in on the action in a galaxy far, far away. So the directors of the next 3 Star Wars movies decided to do something special. They would all cameo in one of the films they weren't directing. And so, The Last Jedi director Rian Johnson had a blink-and-you'll-miss-it moment as a Death Star technician in Rogue One, while Rogue One director Gareth Edwards had a silent cameo in the climax of The Last Jedi, holding a weapon in the background next to a Resistance fighter. Phil Lord and Chris Miller, the original directors of Solo, were all set to have their turn as well by also appearing in Rogue One. They made it to the set one day and got decked out in elaborate costumes to appear in the background of a scene on Jedha, but before they could finish shooting their cameos, they were called away by a personal family matter. On top of that disappointment, they didn't even get to finish making Solo. Ron Howard eventually stepped in to take their place. The final cut of Zack Snyder's Justice League in 2021 featured the live-action movie debuts of famous DC Comics characters like Martian Manhunter, Darkseid, and more. But even though the final cut was about 4 hours long, it didn't have quite enough room for another DC Comics staple. In a scene at the end, the Jon Stewart version of Green Lantern was set to appear alongside Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne. The part was supposed to be played by Chicago Med actor Wayne T. Carr, and he even shot some footage. Unfortunately, this cameo was vetoed by forces bigger than Snyder. Warner Brothers brass reportedly told the director that they had future plans for Jon Stewart that the cameo would have disrupted. So Snyder ended up replacing him in the scene with Martian Manhunter. Fans of Jon Stewart can at least rest easy knowing that Aaron Pierre is set to play him in the upcoming TV show Lanterns.
This character means so much to me. It's a character that radiates, for me, identity and strength, charisma.
Tim Blake Nelson has enjoyed an impressive and diverse career with supporting roles in the likes of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou and the Watchmen TV show, as well as a starring role as the title character in the Coen brothers' western The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. He's also worked behind the camera, directing indie flicks like Eye of God and Leaves of Grass, and his expansive resume almost included a trip to Arrakis. Nelson's role in Dune Part 2 was never officially confirmed, although it was supposedly only going to be a single scene. The actor revealed to MovieWeb, "I had a great time over there shooting it, and then Denis Villeneuve had to cut it because he thought the movie was too long. I am heartbroken over that, but there's no hard feelings." Villeneuve has talked about how challenging it is to cut anything that he's filmed from his movies, so this decision was almost certainly not made lightly. But considering how much plot Dune Part 2 was juggling, it's not surprising that a character who only appeared in one scene wasn't essential enough for the final cut.
Of course, one always wonders, as an actor, whether if you'd just been a little bit better.
It wasn't you.
2012's Life of Pi follows a teenager who goes by the nickname of Pi as he survives on the open seas with only a tiger named Richard Parker for company. The movie also features wraparound sequences in which an older Pi tells his life story to a character credited simply as the writer. That role was a stand-in for Jan Martel, the author who wrote the novel that the film is based on. In the final cut, he's played by Rafe Spall, but originally he was going to be played by someone much more familiar to American audiences. In fact, this part would have reunited director Ang Lee with Tobey Maguire, who starred in Lee's 1997 movie The Ice Storm. But during post-production, Lee decided that Life of Pi just didn't benefit at all from the presence of such a famous American face. Thus, the lesser-known British actor Spall stepped in. Ultimately, Life of Pi's massive worldwide box office haul of $609 million made it clear that it didn't need a cameo from a former Spider-Man to become such a huge hit. The 1986 big screen version of Little Shop of Horrors is considered by many to be one of the greatest movie musicals of all time, not to mention a dazzling display of practical puppetry effects. But it wasn't all smooth sailing getting it made, as there was some last-minute panicking over the conclusion. The original alternate ending was more faithful to the bleak conclusion of the theatrical source material. Lead characters Seymour and Audrey would have perished, while various Audrey 2 plants would have taken over the world. Test screening audiences found this sequence to be filled with spectacle, but far too grim. So director Frank Oz quickly filmed a new ending that ensured that the hero survived after the climactic Big Green Mother from Outer Space musical number. Unfortunately, this came at the cost of a noteworthy cameo. The character of marketing executive Patrick Martin appears in both endings, and he was initially going to be played by character actor Paul Dooley. But Dooley was simply unavailable for the reshoots, so Jim Belushi stepped in for the revamped finale. Having an actor more strictly known for comedy may have helped ensure a lighter tone for the climax, but losing Dooley still hurt.
Why, this thing could go worldwide.
Worldwide?
Alan Tudyk is beloved for his many voiceover performances, and one of the most memorable is surely the snippy droid K2SO in 2016's Rogue One. His finely tuned line readings produced some of the funniest moments in the galaxy and ensured that K2SO earned a place in the droid pantheon. But Tudyk's presence in Rogue One was almost even bigger. There were plans for him to have a live-action cameo that would have referenced his role in the Vimeo series Con Man. As the actor revealed during a Reddit AMA, Ray Nearly, so the character that I play in Con Man, sort of my alter ego in Con Man, had a role in Rogue One. I played a pilot and the scene got cut. Like, did Ray Nearly survive? I was really looking forward to seeing Ray Nearly in Star Wars, but truthfully, Ray Nearly would never get that good of a job, so it was probably pretty good that he didn't. Ultimately, this cut was probably a blessing in disguise as it perfectly fit with Ray Nearly's struggles in Con Man, and Tudyk still got to be a major part of Rogue One anyway. No actor is safe from director Terrence Malick's habit of cutting major parts from his movies during post-production. Just ask Adrian Brody, whose role in The Thin Red Line was infamously cut down to almost nothing. And he's not the only one. Other acclaimed performers like Jessica Chastain, Rachel Weisz, and Benicio del Toro have all been deleted from various Malick projects. Not even Christian Bale was safe, even though he played the lead role in Malick's 2016 film Knight of Cups. The actor spent 3 days filming footage for Malick's 2017 feature, Song to Song, which starred Ryan Gosling, Rooney Mara, Michael Fassbender, and Natalie Portman. But as far back as 2013, Bale had already resigned himself to missing out on the final cut. And this part was initially supposed to be bigger than just a cameo, although Bale's busy schedule forced the role to be trimmed down, so he started to suspect that he wouldn't be in the final version at all. His hunch was correct. He and several other notable actors were indeed cut from the theatrical version of Song to Song.